We are beginning the turn of September 26th here in Arracourt, Battalion Combat Series, continuing on from the last video where I am playing through solo the full campaign. And it's been really fun. Obviously I think the Allies, the Americans, are on the back foot here coming into what we're about to take place in sort of the home stretch, the final 5 turns of the game. Got a lot of work to do, and the Germans have enjoyed some success as we've moved through the halfway point. For this upcoming turn, and I should mention, if you haven't watched that first campaign video, you want to get up to speed on how we got to where we were, go check that out. Tried to make it as digestible as possible. This one might be a little shorter because we don't have as many turns to go. But speaking of turns to go, on this turn we did roll rain weather, so that's going to reduce visibility. And it also really impacted Allied air support, of which they have none. So let's just go real quick and sort of talk about, into these final 5 turns, what I'm trying to accomplish with each side, starting with the Americans and the Allies. We've got 21st Panzer on the run up here. I want the French to continue to push their advantage there, and 2nd Cav to help support them and basically just lock off this side of the map. The Germans don't really have much left there to mount any sort of counterattack and threaten Luneville in the amount of time we have left. It doesn't seem like. Now that is an opinion coming from someone who is somewhat inexperienced with the system. So we're just going to have the French and the 2nd Cav the formations kind of hold, mop up, maintain security here. We've got 79th Infantry moving in this direction. They are going to be the brunt of a force that really finally tries to dislodge 15th Panzer Group, who have been miraculously holding the center of the battlefield, even though they haven't been able to put a lot of pressure on Luneville itself. And we're also going to try and get CCR from 4th Armored to move up into a more offensive position. They don't have a ton of units, but they've got a mechanized battalion or a company here. They've got an armored battalion there. We want to get them moved forward because we want to bring 79th Armor this way. We want to bring CCR4 this way. And we basically just want to shove the Germans out of here. Why do we want to do that? Well, and that's going to be possible now because 106 Cav has come over here and is screening the approach to Luneville from the left. So why do we want to do that? Because we need to be able to threaten the flank of the massive German strength positions over in this part of the map. We do have CCA4 still holding the town of Arracourt here, or it's not even a town really, it's just the hex of Arracourt here, it's a village. But it's looking extremely tenuous. The CCA4 took some huge losses last turn. They've got their line pushed back. A lot of these guys are actually out of command because the HQ had to displace all the way back here. We've got German incursions pushing through this forest in this direction, threatening this spot. We did manage to bring back with replacements a couple of armor units, which are worth VPs if they're dead. So that's good to get those off the scoreboard. But it's looking not great. The Germans have committed most of their forces in this battle to this section of the map. So we need to put some pressure on them this way to stop the steamroller. And if we don't do that, I think the Germans are going to have a pretty easy time winning this game. They probably are going to be able to take Arracourt this turn, which is going to, and I'm going to have to fall back with these units, right? I have to, as the Americans, give that up for the time being and then try and push against it near the end to see if I can get it back. The other thing I need to do as the Americans is really start to take out these German armored units. Again, victory points here on the board. If I can eliminate them, it's going to be hard for the Germans to bring them back with the amount of replacements they get. And even if I lose 2 of the 3 victory point locations, I might still be able to win if I do enough damage. Germans obviously are going to be very aware of that. They're not going to put their armor into places that it's going to make it extremely dangerous or extremely likely that the Americans can hit them. But again, their punching power is their armored units. So they're going to have to use them to achieve their objectives, and then they're probably going to want to secure those objectives with infantry and other units that are not worth victory points. So to that end, we've got the 113th Panzer Brigade. We've got the 111th Panzer Brigade here. Nice little channels to surround and punch through, protecting the 15th Panzer flank along this river. We have got the 11th Panzer Division, and we have got the 559 Grenadiers over here. Both 559 Grenadiers and 35th Infantry are both not going to activate this turn. They were both at high fatigue. Obviously, 559 Grenadiers ended up taking Chateau Salin last turn, if you watched the previous video. 35th Infantry is going to try and push back against that, but as you can see, they're a little bit outnumbered. And of course, the threat from 11th Panzer coming down this road here means that 35th Infantry can't get super far forward, otherwise they're going to be outflanked. So we need to shore up this position here. If the Americans can get their act together with CCA4 kind of get more get some defense and counterattack possibilities set up here, there is a chance that they can take back the locations they're going to need. Germans sitting pretty in the driver's seat. They've got tons of forces. They're probably going to be able to take that this turn, if not the next turn. And then it's just going to be a matter of hanging onto their gains and inflicting losses where they can be opportunistic. And I think they are going to be pretty good going into the home stretch. The one thing I will mention too, the Germans did eliminate an entire formation, CCB4. You remember them? They were down here. All their units tossed were destroyed, and so that formation is actually out of the game now. So that is also going to hamstring the American efforts to retake some of this territory. So it's been a fun game, back and forth. I really like the way that both sides have been able to parry and thrust, and we're going to do that here a little bit more and see if CCR 6th Armored or CCB from 6th Armored comes back onto the map for the Americans. That would be a huge boost to them. That's in next turn. All right, so let's get going, and I will come back at the end of September 26th to show you what has happened. All right, we're done with the September 26th turn. Not a ton of activity, a lot of resets and a lot of sort of advances by the Germans. Both 11th Panzer here and 113th Panzer here have pushed forward, pushed ahead, and are starting to put the squeeze on CCA 4. The prepared defense did come in handy. They were able to withstand some fierce attacks here, did some losses to the German panzers that will help, but I don't know how long they're going to be able to hold out. And then over here, the Germans elected not to attack. They just didn't quite have the advantage they wanted, but they've moved a lot of units in here, and it's going to get real bad for the Americans in this sector of the map, I think, on the next turn. I think there's only one formation that is going to take sort of a rest turn, and that is going to be the 11th Panzer here, but this is going to be nigh uncrackable by the Americans, given the forces they have. Other things that happened on this turn, we had some ineffective engagements here by the Americans against this 15th Panzer Group Division, who is still holding strong despite being surrounded. Unfortunately, 79th Infantry was in a recovery turn to restore their fatigue, so they didn't get to move, but I think this turn they're going to definitely try and bring the hammer down on a lot of these positions. We still got coordination problems here with 2nd Cav and CCR 4 and 79th Infantry, so we've really got to get that shored up to make the most of our units. And then up here, the French launched an attack sort of across the river against the remnants of 21st Panzer, and they were repulsed pretty heavily. So 21st Panzer bought themselves a little bit of breathing room. They're not likely going to be able to go anywhere. They're pretty well contained. But the French did take some losses in that turn there. I don't know whether that will be consequential or not. We'll find out. We are about to do a pretty pivotal die roll for the Americans to see if some of their forces that exited the map earlier in the game return, and it needs to be a 5 or higher to bring back CCB 6th Brigade. Oh, and we get it. So what does that mean? That means earlier in the game, near the beginning of the campaign, we did lose CCB 6 from this general area, but wow, 1/3 chance for them to return, and they're coming back. Let me show you what they come back with. So CCB 6 is coming back with this mechanized infantry task force and this tank task force, both of which have 6 steps, and both of which are pretty good. These are both dual units. They're very, very versatile. They can do a lot of stuff on the battlefield. We've got a 3 armor value here and a 4 efficiency rating for this this tank task force, and we've got the same here for this mechanized task force. So it's going to be really sorely needed reinforcements for the Americans. I need to look where they come on. They could definitely use some help over in this direction with some of these units. They could definitely go after some of these German panzers, which again are victory points at the end of the game. We'll have to see what I can do to use these folks. So let me take a look at that. So it ends up being really good news here. They're coming back at entry area A, so they can come in here, here, or here, their choice. That's going to be critical. I think what we might do is put them here. That will give me a crossing the streams penalty for activation purposes, but if I put them here and the weather's bad, it's going to be not good either. And I would much rather have them on this road because that will allow them, that will bring them up here, and we might be able to put some hurt and stop this advance from 11th Panzer, or potentially we can bring them this way if CCA4 needs some help. So yeah, I think we're gonna bring them in right here when they come in. and that will let us kind of staunch the bleeding a little bit. Real lucky for the Americans, real important die roll there that they got. So we're going to see what that brings for the final segments of the campaign. End of the September 27th turn. We're closing in on the end. The American counterattack was actually very effective this turn. CCB 6, who you saw come into the game here, has moved up sort of in this direction to take the space between 106 Cav and CCA 4. And they wiped out some German units in and around Arracourt from the 113th Panzer. 113th Panzer is in retreat, and the Americans now suddenly find themselves with an opportunity to try and counterattack that hex there. Now, command range is going to be an issue. I've got this unit out of command. And then this headquarters stretched kind of to the end of his supply limit, given where the combat train is. We might be able to move that up. Which, yeah, I might do next turn. So, yeah, the Americans, you know, a little bit surprising that they were able to come out of the gate and do some damage. Did not expect that. We actually wiped out some very valuable Panzer units for the Germans across several different formations. Those are going to be victory points, and so I think the game is still very competitive at this particular juncture. The 559 Grenadiers on the German side have come down and are starting to take up positions to try and force 35th Infantry back and really lock down Chateau Salin. And 11th Panzer, which did not activate this turn, they're still huddled around this crossroads as CCA 4 kind of gets into a more defensible position. You can see they got some prepared defense up. The Americans really just going to try and hang on this left flank of the map because they don't really have the power to counterattack with all of these German units. So this is a bit of a lost cause for them. But the fact that they were able to disrupt this center section, and now it's quite thin for the Germans, and the 15th Panzer Group Division can't come to their aid because 79th Infantry is coming in from this direction, means that we're kind of starting to squeeze the Germans a little bit in the center of the map, and we'll see how that plays out over the next 3 turns. There is a lot of fatigue on a lot of these formations, so not sure that it's going to, you know, they're going to be effective in the final 3 turns. They're not going to certainly make use of those 3 days to the fullest extent unless I get lucky. This objective marker should be taken off. This is where the 79th Infantry have come in and surrounded this infantry unit that's guarding this crossroads here. And if they can break that open, they can get to the HQ and finally put 15th Panzer Group into some trouble, which they've been having an issue doing. French took some unexpected losses over here in an attack against 21st Panzer. They're also looking a little shaky now as well, but you know, they don't necessarily have to push this. They can just simply hold on the river line, and if the Germans want to try and beat their head against them, they can. They've got to be careful because if they come down this way against 2nd Cav, the French can sweep in behind them and cut them off. So it's actually still pretty exciting as we head into the final 3 turns. And I'm going to get the cup set up for that next turn, and we'll see how that one goes and see if CCB 6 can continue their push towards retaking Arracourt. Not much changing here across the front on September 28th. We're closing in on the home stretch. We've had now 3 straight turns of rain, and that has really slowed down a lot of the progress that formations are able to make. The visibility is low, and there's a lot of penalties to activation, especially for HQs that are along these tracks. So we're not getting as much activity as we probably would want. I did take a look at the armor casualties for both sides, and they're pretty even, which does favor the Germans at this point, given that the Germans control both Arracourt and Chateau Salin. So the Allies are trying to take some of those away. There was an exchange somewhere in here where these 2 formations exchange armor losses, hard armor losses, so kind of spinning wheels against one another. The Germans are picking up a lot of momentum in some of the key flank areas, so 559 Grenadiers hasn't really suffered much, and 35th Infantry is just not going to be able to stand against them. We've reached the end of the command tether for this formation here, but the Americans aren't going to have the pushback. This victory point hex, objective hex, probably going to be safe till the end of the game. Unfortunately, CCB 6 failed their activation roll on this turn, this past turn, so they weren't able to get anything going. They're going to try and target here. The Germans, they want to kind of just make that hard, right? We want 113th Panzer, who didn't activate last turn, to move up into these woods and just slow them down to prevent them from getting there. In general, the Americans don't have much power left other than with some of these bigger formations. The French have actually taken quite a bit of losses, and this is becoming a little bit iffy here, where the French and the 21st Panzer both passed on attacks, even though they could have. They're just kind of staring each other down. They're both pretty low in terms of unit steps. The French more so, but the French units are a lot better. So it's just kind of like been a staring contest. If the French do wind up losing one of these units, it's going to be an open run on the French HQ and command train, and that would actually be pretty bad. That would actually compromise this whole right flank. I mean, there's only 2 turns left, so they can't do too much damage, but it would compromise this whole right flank and second cav unit second cav over here. 79th Infantry, they really do need. They finally managed to dislodge 15th Panzer Group Division. There's now enough pressure on these units that they had to pull back and start sort of a withdrawal up this road. That doesn't really get the Americans too much because Arracourt is way over here. And there are no more armory units in this general vicinity, so we're just kind of going through the motions. There's nothing really like objective oriented here. We do have this armory unit here, but basically just trying to like do some attacks on the Germans. It's not really worth much. And the Germans don't have the strength to take Luneville, really, and there's not enough time left for them to take Luneville. So it's looking like we're closing in on kind of a whimper to this campaign. Really, a lot of the pushing power comes sort of in the middle of the campaign. I will play through this next turn and see where we're at. Should go pretty quick. A lot of the formations are nearing exhaustion, or just don't have the ability to do much. So when their activation comes up, they're just kind of lobbing artillery and staying put. So that's where we are. We've got 2 more turns in Arracourt, and then we'll put this one to bed. I just flew through that turn because we got lots and lots and lots and lots of failed activations. I would say probably 50% of these activations were failures. That's what we get for another rain turn. It's just very slow going here as we're coming to like just a muddy, grinding end. About the only action that took place that was of any real consequence was up here. The French did manage to force some infantry off in retreat and makes an advance, and they're going to try and take out this HQ, I guess, next turn to see if they can get to this German, what is that, are those Tigers? Something like that. It's a 1-step battalion of armor, but they really need to take that out if they can. The other armor units, we've got one here who's got at half strength, and then there's one here who's got 1 step left. If the Germans are smart, they're just going to keep them out of harm's way. Don't let the Allies get any victory points. For the second turn in a row, CCB6 got a failed activation, so they have yet to be able to try and take Arracourt back, and we're going into the final turn, so hopefully they can make that happen. We really need better weather to cooperate. The Allies have been getting hosed in that regard. And yeah, this is it. September 30th. Let's do it. Well, as luck would have it, we got good weather on the final turn of the game. That did cause the Allies to roll really well for their air points. They've got 3 air points this turn, plus Bazooka Charlie. So that could potentially target, that Bazooka Charlie specifically could target some enemy armor units that are out of line of sight, which is going to be great. Unfortunately, when it came to replacements, the Allies got 0, and the Germans rolled a maximum 6. So they got 2 armor value replacements. They were able to replenish 1 step out of this battalion, this Kampf group here, in 559 Grenadiers. They were able to bring back 1 unit from the dead pile. This is potentially more important here in 113th Panzer. And then they were able to restore some infantry somewhere on the map. So it's going to be a long road to hoe for the Americans. We'll see if they're up for it. All right, we did it. Arracourt campaign complete. And the result is a draw. Both sides had 2 points. On the final turn, CCB6. So a series of unlikely but very consequential things happened. So first of all, on the final turn, CCB6 did manage to finally get an activation, and they did manage to take Arracourt away from the Germans. That secured 2 points on the map for the Allies. Luneville down here, Arracourt there. The Germans obviously had Chateau Salin. So that was 2-to-1 VPs in favor of the Allies. Then we looked at the dead piles. Dead piles over here, as you can see, lots of German casualties, lots of American casualties, and French for that matter. The way that this works is you count up the total. I was a little bit mistaken. You count up the total number of yellow units that have died. So in this case, 1, 2, I think there's a third one for the Germans in here somewhere. No, let's just, maybe it's just 2. Maybe it was just 2. Maybe it was just 2 armor units. 2, and then the Allies lost 4. 1, 2, 3, and then that French one up there, 4. That gave the Germans a victory point because they had less armor losses, and so it was 2-2. Resulted in a draw. Historically, the Allies won this battle, but it was not to be this time. It was the weather played a huge role. Allies would have lost outright had CCB6 not come back into the game. Remember, that was a 33% chance that they came back into the game after being removed early, and they did come back, and they did cause a lot of havoc here in the German center on that final turn, taking that victory point they needed to force the draw. The other consequential thing that happened that could have potentially saved the Germans here from losing was that final German replacements roll. They rolled maximum on the replacements. That allowed them to actually get back some armored units from the dead pile. And had they not done that, it's very possible that the Americans would have got that victory point for less armor, less dead armor. So ultimately here we are at the end. It was a blast playing this. Took me quite a long time. As you're probably watching this, it's been months for me. This has been set up here. But I did get a full campaign game of BCS under the belt. I'm very happy I played it. I think this is a really great game. I can't wait to play it opposed. BCS as a system I very much enjoy. I think it's very cool. There's a lot of really different things happening here, and the activations, once you get the rules down, tend to go really, really quick. This game in particular with the bigger hexes and bigger counters, a lot more playable than some of the other ones, but I am excited to dig into Chariots of Fire and, Baptism by Fire and Brazen Chariots, to check out some of the North Africa situation with this system. But yeah, it's very good. I can see why there's so many players. I can see why it's got a lot of fans. It's very innovative, very unique, very action-oriented. There's a lot happening every turn. And this is one of the simpler games in the system. Panzer's Last Stand is huge. And I forget what the other one that's really big is. I think it's on the West Front as well. In any case, the series has its adherents, and I understand completely why that is. Getting your mind around thinking about how to use your formation activations to achieve the objectives you're trying to set out for them is very interesting. I think it models command in a very interesting, unique way that most World War II games don't typically do. And at a level that I think shows you how some of the smaller units being put together, working in concert with each other, can achieve things. I mean, you can see here that we've got a lot of space between the units. This isn't sort of like a massive pile up your units hex by hex by hex by hex. There's reasons to leave your mobile units free and able to do things, and because you're limited by sort of the number of things each unit can do, and potentially the number of combats you can have based on the objective token system, not everyone's going to do everything every turn, and so you don't need to have these long lines of troops. It's not really at this scale the way the battlefield would have looked. So I think it's awesome. It's genius. Arracourt's a great starter game if you're looking to get into BCS. It's immensely playable. It's very good solo. Again, I use the chip pull system here. There's a couple different kind of chip pull systems in the rules, or you can play in general with the regular rules, which is you just choose your formations to go, and it becomes a little more chess-like. But either way, there's a ton of fun to be had in this box, and I am happy I completed this. And, I'm happy that we're going to get to move on to some other stuff. I've had a bunch of stuff piling up, as you can see in the background in some of these shots, that I'm excited to get to the table. Don't know when that's going to be. It's been a very busy summer so far, and I'm going out of town again next week. But when I get back, I'm hoping that I can get a lot of gaming time in with some stuff that's been sitting here. So thank you for watching this. Leave your comments below if you want to talk about BCS or anything else, and I will see you on the other side.